The study of intelligent life in the universe would be pretty dull if all intelligent life in the universe was also rational life. But rational life isn't really a thing, so no worries about the universe getting dull. One of the most common things intelligent life does with intelligence is come up with kind of brilliantly imaginative, but also batshit crazy and ultimately destructive explanations for how the hell everything got where it is and what it's all about. Throughout the universe, mythology is all of intelligence's first and favorite pastime. I'd like to say that there is wisdom to be gained in studying myth. I'd like to say that they represent the universal phenomenon of minds being blown by the paradoxical confusion of being a finite being in an infinite universe. I'd like to say that the universality of myth gives us a way to relate to all minds, that the crushing recognition of our minuscule, futile lives begs for the soothing mercy of myth, that this is all good and fine, and it's okay. But I don't think that. I think studying myths is pointless. But, if they ever were good things, then that time has long passed by the time anybody knows what a myth is enough to study it as a myth. They're kind of like civilization's equivalent to a bad dream, where you know you're in a dream, but you can't wake up and you keep punching yourself in the face for some reason. But that said, myths exist, and they can be interesting, funny, sometimes thoughtful, and even insightful. Most importantly, though, they're never boring. So it's fun to learn about other alien cultures' myths, especially the big ones, about where life came from and what happens after it. Humans might be surprised that a large majority of intelligent life believes in some form of altered state psychogenesis. That is to say, most aliens believe the universe was created and or is a cosmic mind experiencing some kind of trip. Humans in general are shockingly prudish about altered mental states in general. Even Terence McKenna would be considered a little bit reserved about mental states by universal or even galactic standards. A lot of it has to do with human physiology. We do sleep and dream and have puberty, pregnancy, and menopause and such, but overall human experience of consciousness is a pretty constant flow over a lifetime. Aliens that evolved from species that pupate or go through multiple gender stages or undergo radical hibernation cycles are far more common than the relatively smooth birth, growth, death cycle humans enjoy. These species develop much greater comfort levels with radical changes to their mental states for extended periods, even becoming different beings entirely. Subsequently, a lot of alien cultures require very little justification for inducing or modifying mental states voluntarily for a range of purposes, including recreation. On the universally relative scale of behaviors, getting completely blasted out of your mind for whatever reason you want is about as significant as most human cultures consider burping. So, it turns out that myths, like the cosmos being the dream of a giant turtle, are actually pretty standard issue, except the turtle is usually something else, and usually it's not dreaming, but hallucinating its balls off on some chemical or radiation or gravitational effect. The best Earth analog might be the dreaming in Aboriginal myths, but influencing culture at a planetary scale with expansive organizations that dwarf the Catholic Church. The xyloforms are an interesting example of altered state psychogenesis myths and its long-term effect on an interplanetary culture. The xyloforms are a colonial cellular species capable of collating the consciousnesses of up to a dozen individuals by carefully structured mingling of their cellular colonies. The co-experience of the conscious couplings can be changed dramatically by changing the physical patterns of their minglings. A small group may choose to integrate in a pattern that induces experiences of dispassionate communication of ideas, or they may integrate in a different pattern that induces sharing extreme emotional drives. This deep experience with conscious states beyond their own control generated a vast and sophisticated cultural belief system of Loop-instantiated self-imagining cosmogenesis. In the silo-form belief system, the universe is quite literally continuously imagining itself into existence. Everything that exists in the universe is a construct of the imagination of something else in the universe. In effect, I imagine you, and you imagine me. It doesn't matter that I'm now and you're later. Neither of us can exist without the other. Scale that up to a whole universe full of creatures imagining each other, and you've got the Siloform's basic belief system. As the Siloform's species dominated its home planet, this belief system primarily affected the Siloform's worldview regarding other Siloforms and indigenous planetary life. Traditions and rituals surrounding consumption of nutrition, colonial mitosis, and colonial dispersion respected the value of actively imagining the experiences of everything necessary for life. It was morally expected that a Siloform should vividly imagine the entire life cycle of creatures that it consumes, including being consumed. Since Siloforms could mingle their consciousnesses, some individuals specialized in facilitating these important experiences. A Gontiform is a Siloform professional, somewhere between a psychedelic chef, a spiritual guide, and a drill sergeant. From a coarse human perspective, they were actually sloppy goo balls that mixed themselves with other sloppy goo balls to make the sloppy goo ball temporarily think they're whatever the sloppy goo ball had for lunch. But in Siloform culture, they served the influential function of both supporting and enforcing adherence to tradition by creating experiences that the culture defined as beneficial or otherwise required. The Gontiforms became a priest-like guild that eventually dictated experiential requirements that supported their own power base rather than conforming to anything resembling ancient Siloform cosmogenesis beliefs. In practice, this meant that they would selectively force undesirable or uncooperative Siloform individuals and groups to undergo horrific experiences while reserving enjoyable experiences as rewards for allies. The Gontiform era came to a rather abrupt end with the introduction of ultrasonic cellular stimulation that could create rough, though satisfying, alternatives to the experiences facilitated by direct Siloform to Siloform contact. The Gontiforms initially tried to embrace the technology, but they were unable to control its dissemination, and it quickly eroded their basis of power. With ultrasonic stimulated experiences came greater experimentation and a period of explosive cultural growth and change, culminating in the development of entirely new understanding of physics that paved the way for Siloform expansion into space. Also, they had a lot of advantages in their manned spaceflight program because they're basically homogeneous goo. They started sending people up like on the third test launch, because why wouldn't you if you can just pour yourself into a can on top of a rocket? An interesting facet of Siloform space exploration to a human observer might be that the Siloforms never really even asked the question, is there life on other planets? Siloforms had begun to imagine life on other planets as soon as they understand the uncountable lights in the sky suggested the existence of uncountable planets. And if they imagined it, it was out there. There were some pretty heroically insane efforts to define how cosmogenesis beliefs should be interpreted in the context of exploring a vast universe. Siloform supremacy happened. It was something about Siloforms being the only ones who really imagine anything. Then it was only certain Siloforms, and then those Siloforms killed each other over who was imagining who, but eventually things settled back to more sustainable levels of stupid and crazy. Modern spacefaring Siloform civilization carries the remnants of their spiritual cosmogenesis origins. And there are still radical sects here and there doing batshit nonsense in the name of imagining the universe so it doesn't blink out of existence, or do something with robot snakes. But on the whole, they've learned to use the abstract, unknowable aspect of loop-instantiated self-imagining cosmogenesis as a loose spiritual inspiration, and they just ignore assholes who say, do this because I imagine the universe said so. Though their brand of cosmogenesis had its own equivalent expressions of terribleness, xyloform beliefs avoided the usual pitfalls of afterlife myths. The acceptance of non-sequential, imaginative, existential dependence didn't really require or inspire a question of what happens after life. It was assumed that your life might be being imagined by something that lived after you anyway, so even after your life might still be being imagined. That seemed to satisfy their mortal curiosity to the extent that they really didn't bother with afterlife questions in ways that other species might consider philosophically irresistible. But there are plenty of other species to get into afterlife myths with, though. There's one that's sort of like the xyloforms, where they think their life is a dream that they dream in death. So they have some really outrageous preservation rituals and amenities. So a lot of it is actually economic, and nobody really believes it. Anyway, I'll do a more afterlife-focused one in Volume 2, maybe.